Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Happy Friday, as always, Phil and everybody out there in listener world. It's been a big week, and we got a lot to discuss today on the podcast.
Happy Friday, everybody. So let's get right into it, Mike. The biggest Overland news happened this week. I'll let you tell us.
So let's preface this, Phil, because I want to tell everybody right here at the top of the show, in all fairness, we know personally just about all of the players that are involved in what we're about to talk about. So I want to make that super clear, for one. Number two, I want to say thank you to so many people that have contacted me, because the news that occurred is interesting. So many people want my opinion on this, which makes me feel really good. Like I must be an OG. I must be one of the big kingpins in the Overland world as well. And what do I think of what just happened? So thank you to all those people out there that think that highly of me and Phil here on the podcast.
Well, the people that contacted me, Mike, they think too highly of me.
Yeah,
because they all contacted me. Like I found out from people contacting me.
Yes,
and
yes,
they basically asking me what happened or what's going on. Like Clay called me.
Yep.
And made these decisions with me.
Exactly. So, if in case you guys have not heard about it, the news this week, which I would say is probably it's the largest news that I've heard come across in the Overland scene in maybe since the beginning. It certainly compares to, say, originally when the Hanson sold Overland Expo. And by the way, Overland Expo got dragged into this too, and we'll get to that a little bit later on the podcast. But the big news was that Epedition Overland, owned by Clay and Rochelle out of Montana, purchased and merged the Overland Journal and the Epedition Portal. And they're calling it collectively, they're calling it the Overland Collective. So that means Scott Brady and his team from Overland Journal and from the Epedition Overland are part of now the Xoverland team, let's just call it. So it was a merger of what I would call two of the three largest entities in the Overland world. And when I say two of the three, I'm saying that Overland Expo would be the third big influencer in that world. What do you think of that, Phil? Is that a fair statement?
I think that is extremely accurate. And I was going to say, let's get into the reason why first before we get into the merger. There are people who may not understand what these institutions are in the overland industry and how historic, whether you look at it as a good thing or a bad thing, but this is a historic big moment in overlanding. So let's start with Epedition Portal. I think would be the first one. So I'll personally say that it was my introduction into this network of overlanders and people who wanted to become overlanders. It was the first place that was like I could go to a forum and find answers to questions. It was the first, unless you know about something else.
No, I totally agree. I mean, for many, many years, and I'm not saying I don't still, but for many years, that was the go-to place. You got to remember, bulletin boards, let's call it a bulletin board, or a forum, was your source of information before we advanced from that point into the world of social media and TikTok and Instagram and watching things on stories and whatnot. So the go-to, I used Epedition Portal just amazing amounts of time to find out about events, to find out about equipment, to find out about other people and what they were doing with their truck builds, on and on and on. I can't tell you how valuable expedition portal was. And still, by the way, still is. It's still. I would say if I had to tell you, it's not as active as it once was, for sure, because there's other options. But it is still. I will occasionally pop on there and take a look at stuff, as I obviously did in the last 24 hours, because there's a lot of chatter.
If I'm going to go to a information board or a forum or something for information, it is absolutely the first place I go still. Like you said, it's not as active, but there are responses from like 2014 that you can find benefit. There's so much knowledge already. There's really not a lot of information to add on to it. That's
That's right.
why I think it's not as active, because it's pretty much set full of knowledge.
Yes. And then the other side of the expedition portal was the Overland Journal. And the Overland Journal has, for many, many, many years, I was a subscriber to the Overland Journal. And to be honest with you, the only reason that I don't actively get it right now is because I'm traveling on the road and I can't receive it in the mail.
Well,
But
just for you to know, Mike, and the listeners, because they may think that they can't get it, I get it on digital now. I
yes,
don't.
and I do want to mention that. Obviously, you can get it on digital. I am like one of those old school guys that really, particularly with Overland Journal, likes to get the actual magazine, the touch and feel of it. It's such a well done production. It's glossy. The cover is always nice. There's been many attempts at other things over the years to pop up to compete with it, and nobody has ever really pulled it off.
Not even close.
Not even close. Scott has done an amazing job with the Overland Journal. So like I said, I go way back. I used to watch for that. The gear review that they did in the Overland Journal. I remember when I was, looking at refrigerators many, many years ago. Overland refrigerators, and they did a gear review on all of them, and it just, I would read that to the end of time, right? I mean, so that was another huge source of information.
And I think, I don't know if it was intended to be, but it became a good place to socialize, not to actually socialize on there, but you'd ask a question, somebody respond, you end up going back and forth. Next thing you know, you're meeting up somewhere.
Yep.
So it was the beginning of it all, in my opinion.
Yeah. For us OGs, we had the Overland Journal, we had the Expedition Portal, and Xoverland certainly was on the other side of this, was been around for years, right? They were always the premier, I'll call it the top of the gravy train of expeditions. I mean, big major intercontinental expeditions, and the videography obviously was there. In cinematography from Clay was always the draw, right? I mean, that was what drew you into that, the storytelling and everything else. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I mean, that's the background, I think.
I think for a lot of people, we've done and just here on this podcast, when you think about all of the people we've interviewed, almost everyone to a person has said one of their inspirations was Expedition Overland. I believe their first videos, when they started out with that Alaska trip, it was the first time that an overlander made it look like I might be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed. Agreed. I mean, I wish this news happened last week when we had Jason Speck from Mountain State Overland on, because he said that on last week's podcast, as a matter of fact, that people have compared some of what he does to them, and that was always his inspiration from the beginning was Expedition Overland. So we've gone full circle there.
So these two great iconic overland entities have merged.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just start out with a general. What do you think, Mike?
Oh gosh, well, that's a beyond. So
Well, let's back up. Let's talk about some of the people you've talked to and
oh gosh. So yeah, that's a loaded question too. We're going to get into all this because you guys are not listening to our podcast, so that Phil and I can give you the politically correct theory on what's going on. So we're going to cut down and we're going to look at all sides of this. Before I get going on the merger itself, I want to mention Overland Expo because it's interesting from reading the comments, and I've been on the comments on Expedition Portal. I've looked on Facebook on various different Overlanders sites and discussion about this. There's a big thread on Reddit talking about this merger. So I've read all of this stuff, and it's very interesting to me that, and the reason I'm bringing Overland Expo into this is that oftentimes, incorrectly, Overland Expo has been brought into this conversation. There's a lot of people that don't know that Overland Expo isn't part of this, isn't part of Expedition Overland or part of Overland Journal. So that's how symbiotic all of these organizations are. And I want to make that point. I think it's one of the reasons why so many people have contacted me and you, because they view it's almost like the it's like right now they're about getting ready to pick the Pope. It's almost like all of the important overland people have come together, all the cardinals involved, and people on the outside of that, on the periphery, kind of see all of us as one big entity, right?
And also, I can understand from the sense that there are people who have even been doing this for a while, Mike. I can remember all the way back to Mormon Lake. That was, I think, when maybe it was happening before then, but I can speak to at least Mormon Lake moving forward. Those three entities were the only names I used to hear. You'd go to Overland Expo, and if I recall, I remember they used to be like the title sponsors for Overland Expo. Mm-hmm. So they've been joined at the hip for quite a while.
Yes. And obviously the last big news, I would say, in the Overland world was twofold. Once originally when the Hansons sold Overland Expo to I'm drawing a blank right now on the name of the company. The sisters in the Midwest there. Sorry, I'm spacing it here. Then in turn, a couple of years later, when they sold it to Lodestone, who owns it now, big corporation, basically Expo Corporation out of New York. So that was big news. The difference, I want to highlight this. The difference, I think, was that Overland Expo was a vehicle to bring all of us overlanders together, to do training, to sell you goods, to camaraderie, to, it was show based. This, with Overland Journal, Expedition Portal, and Xoverland, they are, quote, the Overlanders, right? They're not the show. So I think this is what puts this into another dimension of news, is that this is, to me, it's bigger news. I don't want to say, you asked me how I felt about it. I don't want to say that I'm super surprised. The timing actually is interesting. I'm not surprised that they timed this out right before Overland Expo West happens in like 3 weeks from now. And for those of you that have been to Expo and have traveled to Flagstaff, they know that the booth where those guys are all kind of located is all very, very close to each other, right? I mean,
yeah, they have like a whole island to themselves.
Exactly. So and obviously, let's take a step back here for 1 second. Scott Brady and Clay and both of the teams have done trips together, many trips over the years, and there's been a very close relationship with them. So that side of it, I'm not surprised at. Where I am surprised is, and I would only be hypothesizing of what the actual motivation for it to happen now is. And rather than give my own opinion, I can tell you what I've read. I would say largely online, and we're going to get into this a little bit more because this is how it relates. People are probably out there going, "How Mike and Phil aren't talking about politics today?" And we're not, well, I'm getting there.
This is politics
because there's been a lot of. If you were to, if I'm right in front of me on my screen right now, I'm looking at various things I've got pulled up in the comment sections, and I've got to tell you, I'm a little disappointed in the fact that I would say 75%, maybe it's not quite that high, 65% of the comments about this merger are negative. In fact, some of them are downright ridiculously brutal. And I will address some of those. In fact, I'm going to read some today on the podcast. But my opinion on the merger is that I don't see it as on paper. They were already together as an entity. I understand, particularly on the Overland Journal side, especially the Overland Journal side, how people can be very concerned about the journalistic integrity and how that changes. And by the way, this happens when any newspaper or magazine or anything else is bought. This is typical, and you are dealing with an organization like Xoverland that is heavily sponsored by major brands, like Toyota, as an example. So if I'm a subscriber to Overland Journal, I'm going to be concerned that suddenly my magazine that claims and has over the years, and in my own opinion, has done a very good job of being unbiased. I do think Scott has done a great job with that. I think it's been unbiased. But even people that will work for the magazine will tell you, I mean, magazines are going to make their money on selling advertising. I mean, that's just the bottom line, guys. I mean, because I saw a lot of comments out here like, "Oh my God, it's going to turn into just an advertising magazine," and bullshit with the. Well, how the hell do you think the thing survives? It's got to make money, right? It's a business. So, I get the concern that Clay, I'm just saying, I'm picking on him, but he's going to come in and he's going to somehow swerve the magazine and it's going to be, Toyota centric. I get it. I get why people would think that.
That sounds logical.
It sounds
the
logical.
Only reason why I don't think it's an issue or won't become an issue is because the reason why Scott and Clay have reached the point that they've reached and people feel the way they feel about them is because they have been true to the spirit of overlanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think both of them would take it personally not to go away from that.
Well, I agree, Phil. Let's just on a personal level, because I read a lot of negative things online in the last 24 hours about some of these individuals, and I just want to say this on a personal level. I think there's a lot of bullshit involved with that. Like, look, if you don't like them, don't listen to them, don't watch them, whatever. But don't disparage these people. They are one of the reasons why the quote overlanding space exists. And this is a general thing. Here I go into the politics part of it, but this is a general thing in America right now where everything has to be so polarized. And because Epedition Overland in particular is at the top of the food chain, it's called they're the lion, right? If you've got a food chain of all the overland entities out there, they're at the very top. And yes, to answer your question, yes, they spend more money doing trips than most. They spend more money outfitting trucks than most. But last time I checked, these are choices, right? Like you can look, you and I have said this on the podcast many, many, many times. You can overland with a VW Bug or you can overland with a $200,000 setup truck, and they're both overlanding. And because Clay and his crew do it at, let's say, at the expensive level, does not, in my opinion, take anything away from those guys. It's just it's the level they're doing. Yeah, not everybody can ship a bunch of trucks to Scandinavia and pull that kind of thing off. I mean, I get it. That doesn't make them non-relevant, however. And a lot of the comments out there are like, well, yeah, these guys are the bros, and I could go on and read some of the bullshit, but there's just different levels of things. But like at the end of the day, don't all of us dream a little bit of doing things maybe even at a level that we're not currently doing them at? Isn't that part of what we used to call the American dream? You can like today, I can only afford this beat up old pickup truck, but that doesn't stop me from watching these guys go across Alaska in these nicely set up rigs, and maybe one day I can be like them. At what point did that not become cool anymore?
It never stopped becoming cool, Mike. What you're talking about now, it basically just speaks to humans and how they are. It doesn't matter. You can take anything where someone is achieving or overachieving versus the masses. The masses are at some point going to turn against you. They're going to have disdain for whatever success you have, for whatever achievements you have, whether it's in an office or whether it's overlanding across the country. So that's all this is. So I kind of like listen to it and just throw it away. Because I bet you every single person who made those comments, if you said, I'll snap my fingers and now you can have Clay's life, they'd take it in a heartbeat.
Of course they would. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. It's largely, it's just a lot of it's jealousy. But now having said that, let me give you
Mike, we got to use the young language. People are being haters.
They're haters. Yeah, you're right. But let's analyze that for a second. How do I say this? So the negative side of it is that, and you asked me what my opinion was. I'm not answering the question. I'm going to give you why I think it happened. I do think, if I had to take a guess, I would say that Expedition Portal and Overland Journal, I don't want to say struggling, may not be the right word, but I would say that financially and it's just like any other magazine or news outlet. I think there was probably some pressure there where things weren't as rosy as they once were.
Yeah, I don't think things are bad. I think it's indicative of the whole overland industry. We've reached a crescendo, we don't know where it's going right now. And if you look at the whole industry, there are a lot of people making moves.
Absolutely.
I respect that. That's,
I think what's
survival of the fittest.
But so what I would say is the motivation probably behind some of this, and I don't know that anybody's going to admit to that part of it, but was that, I would, if I had to take a guess, I would say Overland Journal subscriptions are down. I could be totally wrong on that, but just my guess based on what I hear in the world about every other subscription to anything else. Obviously, as you and I talked about earlier on this podcast, I would say the Expedition Portal probably, the usage is less. So there was probably some motivation there. On the other side, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, Expedition Overland, and I think we even probably talked about it with Clay on this podcast a little bit, how they're trying to diversify a little bit, I think they've realized that what they do is put out a very high-end glossy product. And to some extent, they brought in what I'm going to call smaller overlanders and started featuring them on their Expedition X Overland platform, because some of them are more relatable. And not only that, like obviously, the more people that you feature and the more different kinds of trips that you do, you're going to touch more people, right? It's the funnel. It's my funnel mentality. So the more people that can relate at the end of the day end up in your big funnel, right? So I think that they, based on the comments, okay, there's a lot of negativity towards Xoverland, and most of that is what you just said. The haters, they're jealous, they're irritated that it's sponsored. You know why? I don't know. I mean, I'm sponsored too. I've been sponsored for years by multiple.
Half the people making the comments are sponsored, or they looking for a sponsor.
Exactly, and that's my point. So that, what are they mad that Toyota and General and who else is Red Arc or whoever else they have sponsored at Overland? They're mad because they're look. Sponsors are going to support quality, and they're going to support people that have lots of followers. So if I'm a sponsor, of course I'm going to want to give whatever Expedition Overland wants. I mean, this is look, we're talking about is the biggest news, right? So, I mean, I don't know why people are surprised.
And they've been here since the beginning.
Exactly. So, so I think that but I think that this is an outlet where they look. I'm sure Rochelle and Clay read I mean, I don't. I mean, I'm guessing they probably read all these comments too, and I'm and hey, I take it from somebody like myself. I get just blasted on YouTube. The negativity out there is overwhelming, and many of us, myself included. I kind of laugh at it, to be honest with you. And I usually give some snarky answer to it myself and move on. And I get it. People are going to be haters. I've been called everything under the sun, from, a world destroyer, polluter with my big truck, to, a millionaire that can do whatever. I can travel full time, and to all this other bullshit. Nobody, it's just, it's endless. So I feel for those guys on that level.
I have a little secret that I use, Mike. There are certain people in this industry that are really not into what they're doing. And what I do is I don't click on their stuff. That's all you got to do.
Exactly. And I think I said this before, that even when it comes to Overland, I this is just a personal preference. I liked some of their older stuff better than some of their newer stuff. Now I
agree with that.
This is it's just more my speed. Not taking anything away from the newer stuff, by the way. It's always been so professionally done and well done. It's just a personal preference, and I do recognize, as somebody that look at if you look at my channel, I spend a lot of time building things on what I'm going to call a budget, from a standpoint of, it's not I talk about this at Overland Expo. You can compare, like, say, my big Overland rig to Earth Roamer or a Global X truck or something, and they cost 5 to 10 times more money. So I like to kind of always take that building it on the cheap angle. So I am very sensitive to and I very much understand where people really bash the crap out of Xoverland for the wealth or the perceived wealth of what they're getting it online right now. Oh, well, just spend what did they buy that for? More money. They got more money than God, blah, 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 blah. You get all that stuff. We heard some of that riffraff when we went to the Overland Ranch last summer, which, by the way, was an amazing place. It was an amazing.
It was one of the best times I had at that type of event in quite some time.
And that's what I want. If you're listening out there and you're a hater or a doubter or a jealous person, what I want you to hear is that in real life, these players that you're critiquing online are real human beings, and they really have a passion for what they do, and they have a passion for letting other people in to what they do, and teaching and training, and so before you bash them for what somebody has to be at the top of the food chain, and it just so happens to be them.
And again, I go to looking at it macro again, Mike. There's always somebody who does something tremendous, and others will look at it and be like, oh, I could have done that. And they'll have a disdain for you. But the difference is that person had to get up and go to initiate it and move forward with it. And that's another reason why the hate. People wish they had done it. They wish they were Clay. They wish they were Scott Brady. And since they're not, they have disdain.
There's a comment in front of me. I'm looking at some of the comments that were in. This one says, I'm going to read the damn thing. It says, if you've been doing this for long enough, you can't help wondering if the whole thing hasn't morphed into a stupidly expensive pastime and money grab. Okay, we've talked about that part of that statement on this podcast many times. Yeah, to some extent, yeah, it has. So what? Move on. Overland Expo has turned into a farce of hucksterism and SEMA level overkill, with its dress code, beard culture, and bro BS. Everything has gone full corporate, driven by a YouTube content machine where dudes take $100,000 rigs. By the way, I think I've been thrown into this comment right here. Take $100,000 rigs on adventures to trails in Utah that we've all done 15 times. Every year, the obligatory adventure to Tuktuk, the trip down the Pan American Highway, the exploration of Winnebago thick Highway 395, all to the service the demand for gear. Okay, well, on the surface, I mean, this guy that wrote that isn't wrong.
I was about to say, I kind of agree with that.
There's a bunch of that involved for sure. I mean, but like, dude,
I've literally done everything he just said. So,
but you notice the current here is basically picking on Overland Expo. It's picking on this merger. It's picking on guys that have $100,000 rigs. It's picking on people that go to the Pan American Highway, that go to Tuktuk and up in the Arctic Circle. But like, last time I checked, isn't that the definition of fucking overlanding? These people are, all of these things you just described are people actually doing something.
So I've been holding on to this. Let me get this off my chest, Mike. And I hope Clay and Scott are listening right now. And maybe they have this information.
I'm a little afraid if they are, because God knows, I mean, you know me, I just tell it like it is.
I would like to know if there's some information out there to confirm what I feel. I feel that a majority of these complainers, I bet you 70% at least don't even have a passport.
Yeah, yep, I agree.
And it's like I said, going back to the macro, it's kind of like when people be talking about politics, but they ain't ever left the country, but they think America is the greatest place in the world. It's the same kind of vibe with this. It's a lot of people that just they got a Jeep and they go camping, and it's cool that you feel like you're part of this community, but you just hating because you don't know what you're talking about. You really haven't done it. You really haven't experienced it, and you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Phil, remember what we're talking about here is that we at the top of this podcast, we kind of started out by saying that these are some of the largest organizations in overlanding. So by definition, if I'm new to this world, or I've never really explored overlanding, these are the people that you're going to find first, right?
Yes.
Right? So by definition, that means that you're going to get a lot of people that don't quite get it, right? The OGs understand this. The people that have been in the overlanding, quote, camping, whatever you want to call it back in the day, sitting around campfire world, they understand what's going on. But if I'm new and I just went and bought my first Jeep and I bought my first roto pack, and then I go, what do I do now? And I go on YouTube or I go on the internet, who am I going to find first? If I search overlanding, I'm going to find Expedition Overland, or I'm going to find Overland Journal. So they're going to take the brunt of the bullshit first, I think. Right? I mean, that to me seems like one of the issues here. I mean, I have never seen this many comments on anything in the overland world. This is like 10 times the amount of comments and publicity than I saw when Overland Expo was sold, to be honest.
When crazy. You're the king, people are waiting for your fall. And this is the closest thing to anything that anybody could say is a fall. Maybe there's something going on bad about financially for these guys. This is the first time anybody has had an opportunity to say anything. I don't have much to say about this as far as the business thing. I think it's a good thing that they got together at this point, considering the way the industry is going. It kind of protects them both in a sense, and it strengthens them. And I just want to say one particular thing to the audience who, if they are a hater of one of these entities. Mike, I've been putting a mic in front of Overlanders for about a decade now, and we've together on this podcast just a tremendous amount of people, a who's who of people. So whoever, I'm talking to the audience now, whoever you do like, whoever you are a fan of, I've talked to them and they've told me that these are their favorite people and that's who inspired them. Everybody who I think counts all speaks favorably about them. And I'm not talking about speaks just favorably about them when others can hear them. I'm talking about conversations around the fire and where people are just letting it rip what they really feel about things. And like I said, your favorite Overlander is a fan of Scott and Clay.
Yes. Phil, you have a great point there. And I don't know, maybe we're doing a service by explaining that to people. If you don't like watching Expedition Overland on YouTube, then move on to a different channel. Watch me or watch, I don't know, Lifestyle Overland or watch, who knows, anybody. Everybody has a style, right? So what I'm hearing is that this is more about an attack of style than anything else, and that worries me because I mean this is my beef that we talk about on a week-to-week basis here about politics on this podcast, is that it would appear from most of the comments here, this very much runs in line with what we're seeing in America in general right now, is that everything is black and white. You have to take one side or the other. There's no such thing as there's barely a comment. I'm looking right now as I'm talking to you guys on my screen. I'm trying to find a comment where somebody says, I'm excited about the merger, two good organizations. I'm a little skeptical that this could happen. Not sure. Let's see how it turns out. I don't see any comments like that. It's either so excited that you guys have got together, incredible people doing great things, love it, or this is the worst thing that's ever happened. There's a bunch of crooks, and it's all marketing. There's no in between here, and that's the problem that we have in general. And that worries the hell out of me.
Mike, could you give me 3 to 5 things that the majority of these people in these discussions would like for them to do that they're not doing? Because I'm like, what do they want them to do? They are leaders of instruction and training. They give inspirational speeches about getting out there and doing it. They cover just about every base. They cover the instruction. They actually go to places and show you places that you may not have even thought about going. And what is it? What don't you like about them?
So let me start by saying I had a call this morning with one of my Patreon supporters. And I do calls consulting with these guys at my high level Patreon every month. And the guy asked me, he goes, Mike, what do you think about this big merger that happened? I'm concerned. This is what he said. And I go, okay, why are you concerned? And he said, well, I'm concerned because, I feel like this could be I could get less information. And so in fairness, most of the people that I consult with are building new trucks. Many of them are getting into the world of overlanding. They've been around it, but they're getting more serious. Some of them are getting towards retirement age where they're going to go full time on the road, whatnot. And his feeling was that this could take away a source of information. Meaning, like, obviously when you merge together now there's only one entity instead of two, right? So there's one less source. And I think he was taking the path, which I've seen many times here online, that there's going to be more bias involved. I think that the fear is that it's corporate controlled, and that it's all advertising, it's all the almighty dollar, and there's less truth involved in everything. And I think that's the concern. So to some extent, those kind of people, which are thinking rationally, by the way, because it was a realistic conversation. It was, some of these comments are like, they're going to hand out a free a Bible and a Toyota with every subscription, Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's of Overland. I mean, I'm just reading stuff in front of me. It goes on and on and on. So some of this I could just be like, this is a bunch of idiots. But then, God, I'm going to get flamed on Expedition Portal. You watch. You're going to search for Drive the Globe next week on Expedition Portal and be like, that asshole is down there talking about me. He read one of my comments. But in seriousness, like I think that's a fear, particularly, like I said, on the Expedition Portal and the Overland Journal side, the loss of integrity, because I think it's widely viewed as Expedition Overland. Well, let's be fair. Expedition Overland doesn't need, or didn't need, journalistic integrity as much before, because it wasn't really it wasn't a magazine. It wasn't a source of information. It was simply their own channel of their own trips and their own cinematography. So, I mean, look, if you're making a movie, you do it the way you want to do it, right? I mean, that's your call, and people can choose whether to like it or not. And in their case, they do it at, like I said before, at a high level with a lot of money, and some major sponsors. And I think that mistakenly people are thinking that Overland Journal, the magazine, or the portal did it without that. And that's not 100% true either. The magazine wouldn't exist without, it simply wouldn't exist without sponsors, right? Without advertisers. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, Toyota's paying Xoverland for advertisement as if they run an ad in Overland Journal. It's the same difference as advertisement.
So, Mike, let's talk about sponsors just a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think there's some misconceptions about that. Absolutely. There are people who have sponsors, and and that sponsor, their product is crap or their customer service is crap, and they get on YouTube or whatever on their social media and they tell lies. That absolutely exists. There are absolutely people who are sponsored who give biased opinions. But the majority, and if I'm wrong, Mike, cut me off at any time, okay? The majority of the people that I know who are sponsored, they usually already were using this company's products and they developed a relationship over years. So the person loved the products already. So it's not like, yeah, they do have a bias toward the product, but most of the time they have a bias toward the product because it's something that they use and they really feel strongly about. Like,
yeah, I mean, you could throw me under the bus and use me as an example. I have sponsors. Like I have not been shy, or I'll tell the truth. Like when I built the truck that I'm sitting in right now, I was heavily sponsored by a number of companies, and we're talking big dollar amounts now. This is not little. This is not chump change. But these are largely, in my case, I'm not going to work with anybody that I don't believe in the product. I'll use Timbuktu as an example here. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about Timbuktu for years upon years upon years. I've had a Scottle way back in the day, back I think at Mormon Lake at Overland Expo. I didn't even know Jerry at the time. You know what I'm saying? So my relationship with these companies, I'll use that as an example, is because I really like the product. I really have come to know the people that are behind the product, and they are real people in the overland world, meaning that they're look, they run a business. They're trying to make money. Let's not beat around the bush on this, but they are doing it in an ethical and a reasonable way, and they use the stuff. These are the people that I really like Jerry. I'm about to do a trip in Arizona, New Mexico that he's on. He likes to do. We're going camping. That's the bottom line. We're going camping, so that's important. And if a company, and by the way, I get approached by companies constantly, as I know you do too, Phil. We get approached by people that want to give us free shit. And in some cases, it is just like sometimes I have to do research on it because I don't even know what the hell it is. And you find off it's some knockoff piece of garbage, or it could be some Chinesium shit that is like really intellectual property that was stolen from somebody in America. Or, you know what I mean? Like there's all sorts of garbage out there. I'm not going to I don't give a crap how much money they give me.
right.
I'm not doing it.
And that's something I want people to understand, to be clear what you were saying, because I've had the same experience. I literally have a storage unit full of garbage that has been sent to me.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason why I have a post office box is because I don't want all these people sending stuff to my house.
Yep.
And you would think if that's all he's driven by is sponsors, then I would accept all this garbage and you'd be hearing about it. Nope. I get it and I toss it in my storage unit. And maybe if somebody needs something and it's a decent product, I'll give it to them.
I mean, we like doing this podcast, and we like all you guys out there in listening world. But let's also cut this. We're sponsored on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, everything that we do is, potentially is a. I mean, it has to, in my opinion, has to be passion mixed with responsibility, and responsibility is we have to make some money by doing this. Otherwise, you end up being a broke guy under a bridge with a lot of passion and no path. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of being an inspiration or in trying to inspire other people or educate other people. You're not going to be able to do that from under the bridge. You follow me? So in the case of, I'll continue using Expedition Overland as an example. These guys, if Toyota gives them millions of dollars, let's just say, in sponsorship, good for them. That means they've earned it. And by the way, I'm talking about Toyota. I'm not talking about some nonsense brand you've never heard of. Toyota is one of the most reputable vehicle manufacturers in the world. So we're not talking about garbage. We're not talking about they're not using Toyotas because God, they just got sponsored by them, but they don't really like them. That's not the case. So I just want people to understand that. I'm trying not to rant here on the podcast, but I mean, I guess that's what we do. But I'm pretty passionate about the fact that, I've read a lot of negativity online, and I'm taking it's insulting me a little bit because I'm taking it personally because some of these comments have directly attacked people that I know are good people. I mean,
Mike, some of them, I get the impression, some of the comments that I've received, I've gotten the impression that there are some people who, in their mind, believe they are the next Overland portal or expedition Overland. They really feel like they're on that same level with them. You just haven't heard about them yet.
Yeah. 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 And this has been you're right. This has been an interesting thing. Yesterday I was on Reddit. Now Reddit may not be the best place to read stuff, but I've learned some new words too. Like this has been very educational. Like what is this word I learned? I'm just looking at it. I hear the word. There's some word. Now I know these words. It makes sense. They're both elitist in their views of overlanding. So I want to read some comments here. I said I promised I was going to read comments. So they're both elitist in their views of overlanding. They have both stated many times you must cross international borders to overland. I'm pretty sure they have not said that. While most of the overlanders out there are lucky to get out of their state or overland for more than a long weekend, it's fun to read or watch, but a tad out of reach. It's like reading a Playboy magazine.
Mike, we can refer out. Hopefully I'll remember to put a link. We can refer back to our own personal podcast with Clay. And he literally just said the opposite of all of that on our
I agree.
He literally was asked the question about what you should do, and he was like, if you got a vehicle, just go.
I agree.
If people have doubts about his message, go to our podcast when we're interviewing him. He literally makes fun of people getting all caught up in the gear.
Yeah.
And I've talked to Scott. Same thing. Neither one of them talks like what they're saying. I've even heard Scott talk about a product and preface it with, you don't need this to get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they need to shut up with that BS.
Here's another one. Watered down, bland, and inoffensive, has an unlimited market, especially in the U.S. It's overlanding content for the couch overlander.
So, so go to, what was the beginning of that statement?
It says watered down, bland, and inoffensive, has an unlimited market.
So what would you do? Let's say it's bland. Mm-hmm. What could you possibly do to make it not bland? They're traveling all over the world in cool ass vehicles
with amazing scenery.
Yeah, what is it that would make it not bland for you? And why is it bland at the current moment to you?
Because they're hating on it, Phil, because they're not doing it.
Usually when something is bland to me, it's because it's my everyday. So if I was doing these trips like this all the time, then that might be bland to me. That's the only way I could see you using the word bland, is you're doing more than they are.
Okay, then it goes on to say, they are creepy to me. So I'm elaborating on what you just said. They're creepy to me. They all seem so fake. They combine the mainstream blandness of Chip and Joanna Gaines with that of a youth pastor that tries too hard to be cool. Maybe they throw in a bit of second-year literature student trying to be deep. If some scandal surrounding them broke, I would have zero surprise.
And see, I've heard people say stuff about Rachel, and Rachel is just the sweetest person in the world.
I'm with you.
It's like no hate in her heart. If it is, it's very, very deep where I can't see it.
I don't know, Phil. After the podcast here, we might get hate mail from them.
And
We're not going to be able to attend the big thing anymore that they're having this summer at the ranch because we're going to be banned.
and like Scott, I see him every year, and he has said he would be on the podcast, and he has said this since the very beginning, like before I was putting out the podcast, and I was just filming a bunch of stuff. He has always been nice to me, even when he did not know who I was, gave me his card and was like, call me. And he didn't know me. He didn't know me. He didn't know of me or nothing. And he went full tilt boogie and was like, here's my card and whatever, give me a call. I don't get this.
Well,
I don't get it.
Hold on. I'm
I've heard
one last comment. This is just I'm reading the haters for a reason because I mean this is the ridiculousness of awesome. Can't wait for the covers to be constant shots of their rigs being sure to show all of their sponsors while they pose in SWAT gear to run their kids to soccer practice in a truck built for the apocalypse. All hail Overland Barbie and Tactical. That's the word I learned. I don't think I ever knew that word. Tactical Ken. May you receive enlightenment from every one of their op-eds.
Now, see, they had to tell a lie to make it seem funny because they said to take it to school or something like that. But okay, all of that, but then they go to Norway or they go to New Zealand.
I think they're picking on their kids, man. I'll tell you, their kids ran the event we went this summer. The nicest kids. Super hard workers all over the place. They drove me back and forth on the golf cart. I can't tell you how many times. I got nothing. I mean, they're great people. It's a great family. Like you guys are way off base. Just way off base.
If it had not been for them, I would have had a terrible time. The children got me around. Remember, my hip was still really bothering me back then. And they chauffeured me around like I was a boss. And I'm nobody. And they were so polite to everyone. That was a compliment that was given over and over again. People didn't even know they were his kids. And they were like, the young people that you have working here are really wonderful. It was like, oh yeah, that's my son.
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, I mean, I'm not gonna read any more of these bullshit things. What I want to bring this full circle around is that it's big news in the Overland world because you have some of the biggest players. And what I would leave you with, and if Phil, you asked me at the top of the show what my feeling on it is, and I'm excited for it because I think that you're combining forces of some really powerful players. The only hesitation that I would have is that, and I think it is in the right hands to perform this correctly, is that they've increased their responsibility to the community and to the overlanding world at this point by doing this merger. Now they're even more important than they were before, and words have power, and they have a lot of power, and I hope they realize that. And power has to be used carefully, and it has to be used appropriately, and it has to be used, in my opinion, to educate and to inspire others in the passion that we are all involved with. So they have a big task at hand. It isn't like two sort of nobodies came together. And that they're gonna, they have so much influence. They have to. That in itself is, I understand Rochelle's going to be the CEO of the new company, and
awesome.
I wish her the best of luck. Obviously, with that, there's a lot, and I wish them a lot of luck because they got to deal with I mean, I hate to be them right this morning reading some of this shit. To be honest, I hope they don't read it.
I'm
Because
going to end with this question, Mike. If you like Expedition Overland or you like Overland Journal, pick your poison. If they were going to merge with somebody, who would you want them to merge with other than the other entity that they merged with? There's really nobody else.
I could see one more merger, and I'm going to throw this out there. And this
Okay.
is like never going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now, it's never going to happen. But it leads me into where I can see this possibly going. The only other merger would be with Overland Expo. The organization that runs that to bring all of the Overland entities together. Expo meaning they run the Expo events. They now control the Overland Journal magazine. They control the largest cinematography video group in Xoverland. And they have another event facility in the Xoverland Ranch. I don't see that happening.
That's a good point, though, Mike. I don't want to spill the tea, as they say, but we actually witnessed those entities mingling at an event.
Sure,
and I won't go any further. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll happen, but
no, because
if it happened, I would not be shocked.
I think in the case of Lodestone, who owns Overland Expo, that's not something that they would probably get involved in because they're very singularly focused on Expo events. That's what they do. They run events. However, I can say, and I'll leave it at this, I can see that because of the media control, and this is similar to what you see in the United States, where you've got powerful people trying to control social media platforms like Elon Musk and Trump to some extent, controlling platforms and media because they have all that under their belt now with this Overland Collective. I can see them becoming a competitor to Overland Expo and running their own events.
Well,
and we've already
definitely in a good position for it.
Yeah. We saw that start last summer, and they have this event coming up this summer at the ranch. And admittedly, that venue is not a venue that is going to do an event the size of Overland Expo. But I did hear, and I continue to hear, particularly from people that are OGs or people that have been in the Overland space for a little longer, there is a strong desire to take some events back to the old days, if you will, back to where it was more about education, more about camaraderie, more about learning and talking about trips, and less about selling gear. As we see Overland Expo move a little bit more towards the SEMA direction, maybe there's an opportunity. And you look, Scott Brady and Clay and Rochelle, they're all very bright people. I'm quite sure they've sat in a room and talked about this at one time or another. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you definitely hit it on the head about there's a move toward more authentic events, more getting back to training, and also it being a more socially centered event.
Yes.
And a good example of that is right here in my state. I've been trying to get you to go to Northwest Overland Rally. They just switched ownership, and I've talked to the owner, and that's specifically his edict on the event. It's always been that way, but his edict is for it to remain that way. And one of the reasons is because that's what people are yearning for. I've told you a bunch of times, one of the top questions I keep repeatedly getting is, Phil, you go to all of these events, which are the ones to go to? And they're asking me because they know I enjoy the social part. That people are wanting to go to these events and meet people and be able to sit around the campfire like everybody's video shows.
Exactly.
And Jason even spoke about it about his event. He tried to have vendors. He tried to have music, and he was like, everybody wanted to just sit around, eat, and drink, and be around the fire. So I'm actually glad to see a move back to that, because that's what got me into it. I was doing my own travel thing, nothing to do with this industry, and I stumbled upon Overland Expo. So
and before anybody makes a negative comment, many of us are here because we stumbled upon it from Overland Journal and Expedition Portal and Xoverland.
Exactly. And we
That's
literally have hundreds of interviews right here on this channel of people making that claim. This is not something we're making up.
No.
I almost don't even ask the question anymore, because I almost know they're gonna say one or both of those entities. Almost, and I mean the big players, the big players. Mike, is there anything you want to say about this that we haven't said already?
Gosh, I think we might have covered it this week, Phil.
So give me a last statement on what you think. What do you think right now and to the future for this?
I think I'm excited about it. I wish all those guys the best of luck. I will be rooting for you. I'll be watching your stuff as I have been the whole time. And I think if you were a doubter or a negative, you should examine it closer and look at all of the other options out there, because they're doing a lot of good stuff, and it's not just them. There's a lot of other people that we haven't talked about today that are in this Overland space. But I think you're going to see more and more of the merger thing. We've talked about the economy being rough. We've talked about just the way of the world. I mean, I was going to talk about on the podcast today, but we didn't get a chance. Maybe next week, the tariff thing. And, there's been some statements, some big Overland companies. There was one in particular from Pete from Moscow Moto talking about supply chain and what the next year is going to look like. So I think you're going to see more of this merger, more consolidation in this over, and I think it's going to go back. The Overland industry as a whole is going to go back to some of these longtime players, of which we're talking about here today.
I agree with that, and I also think that there was some mergering that went on between 2019 and 2021. I believe some of those mergers, they're going to spit those companies back out. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's like some companies that bought up a bunch of companies. I think that they're going to take some of those companies and spit them out and make them separate companies. I think you're going to see some companies that were sold take on new ownership, or the person who did own it come back and with those companies. What do you think about that?
I totally agree, but that's another podcast. There's a lot to talk about there for sure.
Well, I just want to say about the merger, Mike, I kind of look at it like if Stephen Curry and LeBron James were going to be on the same team. Now, history has shown just because you got two superstars, it might not work. But it's a better chance of it working with two superstars than without them. And I respect the game of these two players that we're talking about. And it might not work, but these are two superstars that I'm fans of, and I think if they play ball together, it's a championship. All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.